All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking very real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. So, the Guess Who? They're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, the Guess Who, on the strength of one track alone, a tune called These Eyes. Oh, never mind. A track called Laughing. Screw it. No, not that one. A track called American Woman. No, not the crappy Lenny Kravitz version of American Woman. I'm talking about the original. All of which have been focus tested down to very minimal airplay here in the United States of America. I mean, there are so many tracks by the Guess Who that used to be on the radio, and now there's like maybe one or two every so often. So this person from Canada says, I have many problems with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and how it conducts its business, but I'm not beyond wrapping myself in the flag, meaning the Canadian flag, when there's an opportunity to straighten things out a little bit. Now, Canadians are really humble, okay, because this band, they should have been in the first year they were eligible to be in. Since the Hall began honoring musical pioneers 35 years ago, about 230 artists have been inducted, the vast majority which are American. Approximately 35 are British, although the Beatles account for 5 of those inductions. The group plus each individual member. I don't know if Ringo should have gotten in, but maybe. Rod Stewart for 2, with the Small Faces and as a solo artist. I don't even know if the Small Faces should have gotten in. They're good, but are they that good? 2 are from Ireland, U2 and Van Morrison. Okay, I would agree with that. Jamaica gave us Bob Marley and Jimmy Cliff. Jimmy Cliff, maybe, maybe not. And 1 from Sweden. And yes, they deserve to be in ABBA. How many Canadians? Well, 5. You got the band, you've got Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, twice as a solo artist and as a member of Buffalo Springfield. Leonard Cohen and Rush. Rush is really the true hometown Canadian hero. That's barely 2% of the total, something that seems very wrong for a country that has exported so much music to the rest of the world. Well, we are talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The first 4 on the list are all artists who decamped Canada for the U.S. to further their careers. The band tagged along with Bob Dylan before striking out on their own. Joni and Neil found their way to California, while Leonard Cohen set up shop in New York City before heading west. Only Rush maintained a Canadian base of operations for their entire career. And they have a heck of a time being recognized. It took 15 years of fan pressure to get them on the ballot before they were finally voted in back in 2013. The Red Hot Chili Peppers and Madonna, acts whose careers were launched in the 1980s, were both given nods ahead of Rush. We see this over and over again. Clearly, there's a hoser deficit that needs to be rectified. I hereby submit for their consideration the Guess Who. Now, the Guess Who could be in because they are excellent songwriters. They could be in because they write excellent songs. They could be in because they wrote very original songs. They could be in because musically they're very capable. They could be in for a number of these reasons. They're a radio band, or they were a radio band here in the United States. Again, their influence is starting to recede as the years continue to unfurl, and as time goes on, fewer and fewer people know the brilliance of this amazing band. Led primarily by Burton Cummings and the amazing Randy Bachman, the group had a string of international hits in the late 60s and early 70s that are still staples of oldies and the upper end of classic rock radio worldwide. I would say they're staples, but they're not as stapled as they once were. And let's not forget that in 1970, the Guess Who outsold the Beatles, thanks to songs like American Woman, again, the original being 1,000 times better than that Lenny Kravitz redo. Even after Bachman left in 1970, the hits kept coming, resulting in 2 gold albums in the US. They even brought in the legendary Wolfman Jack to perform on Clap for the Wolfman. That probably didn't help the Guess Who, but it was a radio track for classic rock. Yes, a solid resume then, so what's the problem? There are a couple of issues. First, the Guess Who's heyday was 50 years ago. Many of the 900 or so members of the Hall Induction Committee have no memory of the band and no idea of their importance to rock. You can also add Steppenwolf to that list, by the way. Second, there's that myopia that seems to prevent the Hall from seeing much beyond America's borders. And third, the Induction Committee is a pretty closed group and seems to be susceptible to internal arm twisting in politics that see certain individuals do what they must to achieve their goals. Seriously, how else can you explain Whitney Houston's induction in 2020? She's definitely an important American artist, but is about as far from rock and roll as my pierogi-making Ukrainian grandmother. I like that. How did Houston get inducted on the first try while Judas Priest, one of metal's legendary bands, has repeatedly been rejected on the grounds of what? This is a really good article. A grassroots campaign out of Winnipeg has launched the Guess Who for the Hall, a change.org petition for which they hope to gather 1 million signatures from across Canada and around the world. By the way, I will go and sign that petition in support of getting the band on the ballot for 2021. Hopefully that will wake up the selection committee and get them to start talking about the band. That's step 1. Step 2, providing the Hall is persuaded to get the band on the ballot, is to create more noise when it comes to fan voting. Once all nominees are announced, fans are encouraged to vote for their favorites. The Hall always makes a big deal out of fan voting because it draws so much attention to itself. In other words, it's good publicity for the Hall to have fans vote. Chatter and debate are good publicity. This in turn drives viewership to the big televised induction ceremony, which I don't even think was televised last year, which is the Hall's biggest moneymaker. It would be great to see the Guess Who at the top of that voter table. That, however, does not guarantee a place in the Hall. Despite the fact that millions upon millions of fans participate, their collective vote counts for exactly 1 vote among the 900 plus members of the committee. Not really a fair fight, you know? Still, we have to start somewhere, sign the petition, and forward the link to other fans. Let's see if we can boost the Canadian content of the Hall at least a little bit. And once we've accomplished that, we can turn our attention to Gordon Lightfoot, Bryan Adams, and Alanis Morissette. I would just work on Lightfoot and Adams. I would not worry about Alanis Morissette, but that's my own opinion. Definitely Gordon Lightfoot for sure, and Bryan Adams, absolutely. But yeah, this is a travesty. It's been a travesty for years. This band has more melodic mojo on one album than most bands have in their entire career, some of whom are already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So yes, go check that change.org petition to get the Guess Who a spot in the Hall of Fame. They are way past due.